Alright, if you're like me, you're dying to take a look inside these cylinders. So let's pull number one first. That's the one that's most likely to be grenaded if this engine's blown. I also was reading about how that wasn't very tight. I wonder if there's anti-seize on these. I was also reading about how you're supposed to use a very specific spark plug in these motors. These are BU8H is the part number, NGKs, and I'm betting this is why. This is a very unique spark plug. It's stinking a high heaven of stale fuel, a little oil foul by the looks of it. Anywho, so that's a spark plug that has a center electrode that barely projects past the middle there, and it doesn't have that other little electrode on the top there. So that must be, I'd be willing to bet that if you put the wrong spark plugs in these motors, that when the piston comes up, it'll either bash the electrode on the wrong spark plug, or worse yet, damage your piston. So that's number one. I'm not worried about getting these in the wrong order because they're nicely labeled. There's number one, number two, and so on. So I don't have to pull these out one at a time. I put them on one at a time, I mean. Okay, I can pull them all out at once. Well, I haven't gotten to dreaded number 6 yet. Well, that one looks a lot better. Smells the same, but it's a lot cleaner. Oh, God, that smell brings back memories. When I was a young man and I had a 2-stroke dirt bike.
Ooh, that smell. Can't you smell that smell?
Oh. Uh-oh. Oh. Alright, let me zoom in here and show you the plug conditions I've just witnessed here. Alright, so if you like your plugs oil soaked and fouled, that would be cylinder number 1. If you like your plugs looking like they haven't had many hours on them, but looks like they've been running normally, that'd be cylinder number 2. And if you like your plugs to look like water's been getting in the cylinder, which would indicate a really bad thing on this motor, that's the rust you're seeing on spark plug number 3. That's not good. That's not good at all. That's a lot of rust. Son of a gun. 4 looks good. I really should notate this. I think I will. Alright, let's pull number 5. Good. And here's where people really complain about this motor. Getting to spark plug number 6. Now, in my case, this is all undone. So this is actually dropped down much lower than it normally would be, which is beautiful because I can actually get my spark plug socket in there. Heck, I can almost even get this on. Well, all I need now is a wrench to turn this. So you can see how this is way down here. And if this was up in its normal mounting position, you can imagine how hard it would be to get down into there. That's also going to make compression testing on number 6 interesting. Although, number 6 plug looks new like the other ones, so dirt in there. Okay. 6 looks, that looks brand new. This was not running long on these plugs, by the looks of it. This is where I wish I had one of those scopes, the fiber optic deals. Alright guys, in order for me to do a compression test on this thing, I've got to actually not be hanging it from the flywheel. So I've got to get it on the motor stand that I wanted to put it on, but before I can do that, I really need to get this mount here straightened out. You can see that the way it's oriented right now, if this was vertical like the back of the boat transom, then this motor is kicked up out of the water, and that's going to be a problem because that's going to put the center of gravity too far forward over my motor stand, and the whole thing could flip. So I need this to go down, and I am baffled. I don't understand the principle of how this works. I know that this is supposed to be some sort of a lock that you can flip up. And I think this is supposed to be to temporarily lock it in the up position. Maybe when you're servicing it or something. But what I can't figure out is what the heck you do to release this thing, or get it to release, I guess. And I'm thinking this metal down here that's all rusted to hell, I think this is actually the lock that's supposed to keep it locked in position when you are actually using it on the water. But why isn't this moving? Now these pistons right here look like they could collapse a little bit more. I'm assuming that would be, I don't know, could these, that doesn't make sense. I mean, by design these are supposed to be there, so I don't get it. I wish I really knew more about this. I repositioned the camera so you guys can see what I'm looking at underneath here that's baffling me, and probably right now somebody's having a big chuckle about this because they probably are looking right at it and going, oh, well, I'll tell you what your problem is, Steve. Well, I'm sure future Steve will end up figuring it out, but present Steve just doesn't know what the hell's going on here. So there's a big spring right here that's not under tension right now. So clearly if the motor was kicked up even further, that spring would start inhibiting it from going any further. This whole thing here just looks horrible. This is a bar of rust that is also under spring tension that looks like it used to have hooks by the looks of it. I'm thinking what used to happen is when this swivels down into the position for actually riding the boat, I think what ends up happening is this bar right here moves downward, and this is supposed to click and lock onto this bar, I think. Either that, or it was supposed to lock onto a bar that's missing that goes in this whole series of holes that are right here that have nothing in it. And again, why isn't this going down right now? Now, could it be that this whole pin up here, this main pivot pin up here, is seized? These nuts look like they may have been torqued on. I'm going to try and loosen these nuts on the side here just a little bit and see what happens. I can't find a Zerk fitting or anything to grease this, but I'm thinking that's the main pivot in there. I would think that should have grease in it. Yeah, I hate being flummoxed. Alright, let's check this out. Well, this one on this side turns pretty easily. This one's seized. Let me get some of this weight down on the board. Where are those studs? And get those studs out of there. There we go. Well, it's loose now, but this still doesn't move. Alright, well, these pistons have to move in and out in order for this to move. So I guess the next thing is take these little pistons off, these little shocks off, and see whether or not one of them's frozen. It's like these little decorative caps on the outside. One of them's missing. Alright, hold the phone. I just I took this plastic cap off, and basically it's a bolt under here. This cap's missing over here, so there's a bolt, and it's got a bushing, and I was just beginning to think, boy, I bet you those have been in there a while, and they're going to probably be tough to get out, and they might snap on me. And I happen to grab this. You see what I'm doing here? The bushings are worn, so I can rock this whole shock. I could do the same thing with the other one. Why that's significant to me is because that indicates to me that these are not under tension or compression. If they were, then I wouldn't be able to rock it like this. And if these were in fact what was holding this from swiveling, this little bit of play in here would translate to me being able to move this a little bit, and this doesn't want to move at all. So now I'm thinking that it has to do with this pivot pin here. And what I'm not sure of right now is whether or not this whole pin is supposed to pivot inside here, or whether or not these arms are supposed to pivot on the pin itself. I'm leaning towards the whole pin is supposed to pivot inside there. But I mean, again, I can't see anything as far as how you're supposed to grease this thing. Let me get up underneath there with the light and see if I can't see something. Alright, well, it occurred to me I could just bash on it with a hammer. Well, dead blow mallet. I don't want to damage this too much. What I did was I backed this nut off quite a bit. And what I want to do is I want to tap this with this dead blow mallet on the end and see if that pin will move in and out at all. Of course, the whole thing is the same. Now, it doesn't look like that moves at all. The question is it not moving because it's seized in there, or is it not moving because it's not supposed to move? Just trying to see if that's a rivet. Or is that a screw? Yeah, they look like rivets. I gotta get a magnifying glass. This looks like just a data plate. Serial number is 3272624. And I don't see anything else on here. Kind of dirty. The reason why I was looking at these screws was because if they're screws, then maybe this cover actually maybe this plate comes off and actually doubles as a cover to cover some hidden lubrication point or something. Those just look like rivets, so I think it's made to come off. When I reach underneath here, there's a tube here, and I can't tell whether or not this is actually supposed to spin. Or is this the... I don't know. I tell you, there's a lot of rust. I'm tempted to put something on here and try and pry it to break it free, but I'm scared it'll break something. Scared it'll break something else. Oops. I think this whole part right here is a shaft that's supposed to pivot, and there's a section of the frame right here. It's about this wide, here and here. So I think it sees right in there and there. How on earth you're supposed to get any lubricant to penetrate into there? See, if I knew the name of this pin, which I guess I could look it up on a parts website, then I might be able to actually Google something like frozen Knibbling pin or whatever they call this thing. One of the last things I'm doing before I go up tonight is I just loaded this up with liquid wrench, squirted it all in here and here, even though I'm not sure where it's supposed to be actually freeing up. But I'll leave that soak, try it again tomorrow and see what happens. And one other thing I gotta do is I gotta get myself a board or something, or find something to stick underneath this arm, because this this fine quality Harbor Freight cherry picker actually has a little bit of leak down over time. It's a very small amount, but if for some reason I'm not able to get down here in the next couple days, I don't want to end up finding out that this thing actually leaked down to the point where this motor all whacked out and came down and bent or broke something on the bottom of that. Alright, last night I went online and I saw a video of somebody showing how the tilt mechanism on these old manual tilt Mercuries work, and so now I have a complete understanding of exactly how this is supposed to work. And this rusty mess that's inside here, that is barely recognizable now, is actually supposed to be a rod with two hooks on it. This hook is still sort of present, but then there's this just piece of metal that's kind of, I don't know what's going on there. This piece of corroded metal is kind of off to the side, and then on this side it's really all bashed up. It almost looks to me like this was smashed into it at some point. I don't know. So this is trashed, okay. But what's supposed to happen is, you can see the if the hooks were there, these side pieces right here that I was talking about with all these holes in them, what's missing is a long pin that's supposed to be able to go through and have a safety catch type pin on the other side to keep it from falling out. So that pin's missing, and what's supposed to happen is that pin is supposed to lock into, this is supposed to click in and actually keep that captive, and that happens when the unit is in reverse. Because if this wasn't locked down, what would happen is the prop turning in reverse would actually be trying to lift out of the water. But when you're going forward, this actually lifts up into the released position and allows this to actually, if it wanted to, it could actually tilt back, and the force of the prop pushing it towards the back of the boat, which then pushes the boat, is what's keeping it from coming up when it's going in forward gear. And the reason why they want that unlocked, I assume, is so that if you hit something with the low end while you're going through the water, this whole thing can tilt up and minimize the damage, I guess, to the outboard. Or I'm not sure exactly why, but I'm assuming that's why. So that's what this linkage rod is here that I disconnected. That's what this is. So when you go to tilt this up, when it's on the trailer on the boat, when you go to tilt it up, it's not going to want to tilt up. You actually have to put the gear lever in forward, and when you put it in forward, that will allow this, through this rod, will allow this to actually pull up. So that's how that works. And so that means that as far as my current problem goes, this is supposed to freely pivot on this pin right here. So my current problem stems from this being seized in here. Another interesting thing I saw on the video that I was looking at on that particular gentleman's Merc, his I think the steering cable actually looked like it actually was in a housing that threaded on to this end right here, and the cable went through and came out the other side, and I'm not quite sure how that would work, because on mine it's right here. So this pivots this, so this isn't seized up, which can also happen. Apparently somebody was talking about they had one that was seized up. But what is seized up on mine is this pin does not pivot. Alright, so I did hit that with quite a bit liquid wrench before I went to bed last night. Came down here early this morning just for the heck of it to see if anything was changed, and it didn't seem to want to move at all. So figure, well, I'll try again now. I just wish there was a better way to grab onto this thing. Oh, that still doesn't want to move. Boy, that doesn't want to move. There almost seems to be something clogging this thing. Hitting something pretty solid in there. Oh, whatever it is, I just broke through it. Alright, whatever it is, I can push it back and forth. The screwdriver is actually not long enough to push it all the way through. Oh, dirt. You might be wondering why I would care if that's clogged or not. Well, I'll tell you why. Because what I was actually hoping that maybe somewhere along this inside on this shaft is a hole that you can get lube in there. Yeah, kind of a long shot. Alright, I've come to the conclusion that based on the way this appears to be put together, that this pin is designed to be able to be pulled out or pushed out through here. Because I figure if this pin didn't come out, how are you going to get this piece off? Unless this piece is actually in two halves, because this rod right here has a nut at both ends, so I could take both nuts off of this. Technically, it looks like maybe this piece right here is one part that could be removed. Even so, still, that means that this part right here, this hole on this piece, has to be able to clear these threads. So, I suspect that this centerpiece can be taken out completely and then cleaned and re-lubricated, put back in. Trick is getting it out. I've been tapping it pretty gently and with the dead blow mallet because I don't want to damage these threads and nothing's happening. So what I've done now is I've taken this nut all the way off on this side. I just found this block of steel with a hole in it, and yeah, looks like I'm going to be able to thread this on there, back on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this nut. And what I expect to happen is, well, hopefully one of two things. Either this whole thing's going to start to want to turn in there, which means I've broken it free, or this gap where I've got this nut partially taken off, this gap will actually close, and that'll indicate to me that I'm actually pulling this pin out. Boy, that's really tight that I've got that, and that's not moving by the looks of it. Yeah, maybe it did. Oh, I think I just heard it move. I'm not going to go at it tonight, but I think when I have more time I'm going to need to come down here and put a torch to it and get some heat on this sucker. In the meanwhile, since I've got this nut all the way off, I'm going to put some more. Actually, let me see if I can find my PB blaster. I got some serious penetrant on the job now. I'm taking this nut off because when I end up putting the heat on it, I'm worried about damaging the, this is a self-locking nut, so it's got that nylon bushing in there that does the job of keeping it locked. And I don't want to heat that up. So I'm going to have to take this nut off anyways, might as well do it now.